Hi, beautiful community. Just a very quick take on the talks in Saudi between the Russians and the Americans. Just a couple of big picture remarks that are worth making. I have been a broken record for a couple of years about how the Western capacity to stand up to Putin is a product of democratic decline at home. And that is becoming, though I will be explaining it more systematically and better and over again, but that is becoming more apparent, right? You have a crisis of trust in democratic institutions, you get Trump elected, and then you have Trump dealing with Putin as he is dealing with Putin. That's a direct line of connection between democratic incapacity and strategic incapacity on the international stage. Now, we are seeing a predictable but palpably occurring before our eyes realignment of the US role in the world, and the biggest realignment of the transatlantic relationship since the 1940s, perhaps. The Europeans had time to think about this, but they're still behind, and they're acting slowly and cacophonously, and there are still noises coming out from European leaders about how it's not yet time to talk about troops on the ground for Ukraine, in Ukraine, when of course it is more or less too late to talk about that. So there's a risk of the Europeans being caught acting too slowly as the Trump administration tries to race ahead and talking to the Russians. Zelensky is in a very difficult position because all of these tectonic shifts are occurring before his eyes, which he can't control. And then suddenly, your backer, depending on how you frame it, you could call it an imperial backer of a proxy in a benign sense in this case, is suddenly developing a rather colonial and extractive relationship with you and demanding your resources in exchange for help. Indeed, in exchange for help you've already largely received from the Biden administration. So this is very difficult. Now, Riyadh. The Russians have taken it seriously. The people they sent are serious. And in the past, we may have had negotiations with Mr. Medinsky, somebody who can't, on the whole, pick up the phone and immediately come through to Putin. You have different people here like Mr. Ushakov who can immediately call Putin. So this is a high-powered Russian delegation. But I think the significance of the talks primarily is that this is Russia and the United States developing a wider relationship that goes beyond the issue of Ukraine. This is the Trump administration saying, our relationship with the Russians, this significant nuclear power, have got to go beyond security questions about what's happening in a particular country that isn't a primary security concern for us, and that's Ukraine. Now, you know that my analysis points in a very different direction about the security threat that Putin's unchanged ambitions in Ukraine pose to all Western countries. But that's the significant takeaway, the widening, the conscious widening by the Trump administration and the Russian attempt to take advantage of that, of the relations between the two countries that go beyond the issue and do not go through the prism of the issue of Ukraine directly. And a part of that is an ambition of the Trump administration to lure the Russians away from the Chinese grasp, which the Russians are going to be exploiting too. Enough for today. We'll be talking about this ongoingly. Lots of love.